Sarah, you're terminated effective immediately for disloyalty to family values, my brother David said, sliding the official termination papers across his shiny new HR desk. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. This wasn't just a job firing, this was my own family casting me out of the business my father had built from nothing, the business I'd poured my heart into for 3 years, the business I'd been trying desperately to help grow into the modern world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. David leaned back in his leather chair, the one that still smelled like fresh furniture polish from when Dad had it delivered just 2 weeks ago when he announced David's promotion to head of human resources. My brother's face showed no emotion, no hint of the relationship we'd shared growing up in Scottsdale, no acknowledgement that we'd spent countless summer afternoons swimming in the family pool while dreaming about how we'd run Mitchell Construction Company together someday. Disloyalty, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. David, what are you talking about? Everything I've done has been for this company, for our family. He opened a manila folder and pulled out printed screenshots of my social media posts, my LinkedIn articles about modernizing construction marketing, and emails I'd sent to Dad about digital transformation strategies. This, he said, tapping the papers with his pen, is exactly what I'm talking about. You've been undermining our company's reputation with this social media nonsense, suggesting that Dad's methods are outdated, pushing agendas that go against everything Mitchell Construction stands for. I stared at the papers, recognizing my own words taken completely out of context. These were the marketing proposals I'd spent countless late nights crafting, the innovative strategies I'd researched and developed to help bring our family business into the 21st century. Dad's construction company was still advertising in yellow pages while our competitors were building massive followings on Instagram and TikTok, landing contracts with younger entrepreneurs who were reshaping Phoenix's skyline. Those are marketing strategies, David. I was trying to help us compete with companies like Apex Construction and Desert Modern Builders. They're eating our lunch with younger clients because they understand digital marketing. David's expression hardened, and there it is again. You think you know better than Dad, better than the systems that built this company over 25 years. That attitude, Sarah, that disrespect for what we've accomplished, that's disloyalty to family values. The day David fired me started like any other Tuesday morning in December. I'd arrived at the Mitchell Construction headquarters in Phoenix's industrial district at 7:30, my usual time, carrying a venti coffee and the presentation I'd been working on for weeks. The presentation was my latest attempt to convince Dad that we needed to embrace digital marketing if we wanted to survive the next decade of business in Arizona's booming construction market. Our family business occupied a modern complex that Dad had custom-built 5 years ago when the company really started taking off. The main building housed all the administrative offices, while the adjacent warehouse stored equipment and materials for our major commercial projects. Dad was particularly proud of the reception area, with its polished concrete floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the Phoenix Mountains in the distance. The space was designed to impress potential clients, and it succeeded, but I always felt like something was missing, a sense of energy, of innovation, of connection to the digital world where most of our potential clients were spending their time. I'd been the marketing coordinator for Mitchell Construction for 3 years, ever since graduating from Arizona State University, with a degree in digital marketing and communications. The role was supposed to be temporary, a way for me to learn the business from the ground up before taking on more responsibility. But every marketing proposal I submitted seemed to get buried under Dad's preference for traditional relationship building and word-of-mouth referrals. Dad, Robert Mitchell, had built the company from a one-man operation running out of his garage to a $50 million business with 150 employees. His approach was old school but effective: show up early, work harder than the competition, deliver quality results, and let satisfied customers spread the word. It had worked brilliantly for 25 years, but I could see the cracks starting to show. Younger general contractors and developers were choosing construction partners based on online portfolios, social media presence, and digital communication capabilities. Meanwhile, we were still printing brochures and attending the same networking events Dad had been going to for decades. Our average client age was 55 and climbing, while the most lucrative projects were going to companies that knew how to connect with 30-something entrepreneurs and developers. I tried explaining this to Dad countless times, but he always responded the same way. Sarah, sweetheart, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we've built something solid here. Why fix what isn't broken? The problem was, it was starting to break. Our revenue had plateaued for 2 years, and we'd lost 3 major contracts in the past 6 months to competitors who presented slicker proposals and maintained stronger online relationships with decision makers. That Tuesday morning, I was determined to make Dad understand the urgency of our situation. I'd prepared a comprehensive presentation showing exactly how our competitors were using social media, content marketing, and digital relationship building to win the
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Contracts we were losing. I'd even created mock-ups of what our Instagram and LinkedIn presence could look like, complete with behind-the-scenes content from our job sites and testimonials from satisfied clients. The presentation was scheduled for 9 o'clock in the main conference room. Dad would be there, along with David and our operations manager, Tom Rodriguez. I'd specifically requested that David attend because I knew Dad valued his opinion, and I hoped that hearing the proposal from both of his children might carry more weight. David had always been Dad's favorite, though neither of them would admit it openly. While I was studying marketing and communications, David was getting his MBA with a focus on business administration and human resources. Where I saw opportunities for innovation and growth, David saw risk and unnecessary change. Where I wanted to challenge our approaches and try new strategies, David preferred to optimize and refine our existing systems. 2 weeks earlier, Dad had announced that he was creating a formal HR department and naming David as the head of human resources. The promotion came with a significant salary increase, a corner office, and authority over all personnel decisions. At the time, I was genuinely happy for my brother. I thought having him in a leadership position might help bridge the gap between my innovative ideas and Dad's traditional preferences. I was wrong. David's first week as HR head had been marked by a series of policy changes that felt designed to reinforce hierarchy and discourage what he called unauthorized initiatives. He'd implemented new approval processes for any external communications, established strict guidelines for social media use by employees, and scheduled one-on-one meetings with every department head to discuss alignment with company values. When my turn came for the mandatory meeting, David had asked pointed questions about my marketing proposals and my public statements about the construction industry. I'd published a few articles on LinkedIn about digital transformation in traditional industries, and I'd been moderately active in online communities for marketing professionals. To me, this was professional development and thought leadership. To David, apparently, it was evidence of disloyalty. But I'd had no idea how deeply his concerns ran until that Tuesday morning, when I arrived at the office to find a meeting request in my inbox. Instead of attending the marketing presentation I'd prepared, I was being summoned to David's office for an urgent personnel matter. I knocked on his door at exactly 8 o'clock, still holding my coffee and the presentation materials I'd planned to review one more time before the 9 o'clock meeting. David's office was significantly larger than my cubicle workspace, with a mahogany desk, leather chairs, and motivational posters about teamwork and excellence that he'd hung the day he moved in. "Close the door and have a seat," he said without looking up from his computer. The formal tone immediately put me on edge. This wasn't how my brother typically spoke to me, even in professional settings. We'd always maintained a casual, familial relationship at work, often grabbing lunch together and sharing jokes during long days. He finally looked up, and I could see something different in his expression. There was a coldness there, a distance that I'd never seen before. "Sarah, we need to discuss your future with Mitchell Construction." "Okay," I said slowly, setting my presentation materials on the chair beside me. "Is this about the marketing meeting? Because I think you're really going to like what I've put together." "The ROI projections alone. This isn't about your marketing proposals," David interrupted. "This is about your attitude and your commitment to what this company represents." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" David opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. He'd pulled up my LinkedIn profile, specifically an article I'd published the previous month titled, "Why Traditional Industries Must Embrace Digital Innovation or Risk Obsolescence." The article was a general piece about how established companies across various sectors could benefit from modernizing their marketing approaches. I'd used examples from multiple industries and had been careful not to mention Mitchell Construction specifically. "This," David said, pointing at the screen, "is what I mean. You're publicly criticizing traditional business approaches, suggesting that companies like ours are obsolete if we don't change. How do you think that reflects on Dad? How do you think that makes our existing clients feel? I blinked in confusion. David, that article isn't about our company specifically, it's about industry trends in general. And the whole point is that traditional companies can thrive by adding digital strategies, not by abandoning what works. The point, David said, closing the laptop, is that you're more interested in promoting yourself as some kind of marketing expert than you are in supporting the business Dad built. You're more concerned with getting likes and shares on social media than you are with respecting the foundation this family has worked decades to establish. The accusation stung because it was so fundamentally wrong. Everything I'd been doing, every late night spent researching digital marketing strategies, every article I'd written, every proposal I'd submitted, had been motivated by my desire to help our family business succeed in an increasingly competitive market. I loved Mitchell Construction, not just because it was our family legacy, but because I genuinely believed in what we did. We built beautiful functional spaces that served Phoenix's growing business community. We employed 150 people and contributed to the local economy. We had something worth preserving and growing. That's not fair, David. You know how much this company means to me. You know how hard I've been working to help us grow and compete. The only reason I've been learning about digital marketing is because I can see what's happening in our industry. We're losing ground to competitors who understand how to reach younger clients. David leaned forward, his expression serious. And that's exactly the problem, Sarah. You see our current approach as losing ground. You see Dad's methods as insufficient. You see what we've built as something that needs to be fixed rather than something that should be respected and preserved. That's not what I think at all, I protested. I think what Dad has built is incredible, and that's exactly why I want to help it continue growing. But David, the market is changing. Our clients are changing. If we don't adapt our marketing to reach new audiences, we're going to be left behind. David sat back in his chair, and for a moment I thought I'd gotten through to him. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Sarah, I've been reviewing your work patterns, your communications, and your public statements for the past 2 weeks. I've also been talking to Dad about our vision for the company's future and the kind of employees we need to support that vision. Okay, I said cautiously. Based on that review, I've concluded that there's a fundamental misalignment between your values and the company's values. You're more interested in changing what we do than in doing what we do well. You're more focused on innovation for its own sake than on the proven principles that have made us successful. I felt like I was watching a train wreck in slow motion. David, what are you saying? He opened the folder and removed a document that I immediately recognized as an official termination letter, complete with the Mitchell Construction letterhead and legal language about employment at will. I'm saying that effective immediately, your employment with Mitchell Construction is terminated for disloyalty to family values and misalignment with company culture. The words seemed to echo in the small office space. Terminated. Disloyalty. Family values. I stared at the document, trying to process what was happening. My own brother, my flesh and blood, was firing me from our family business. Not for poor performance, not for misconduct, not for any legitimate business reason, but for disloyalty to family values. David, you can't be serious. This is our family's company. These are our shared values you're talking about. How can wanting to help the business grow be disloyal? Because growth isn't just about revenue, Sarah. It's about maintaining the integrity of what we've built. It's about respecting the principles that got us here. It's about understanding that some things are more important than being trendy or modern or whatever buzzword you want to use. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and tried to see the person I'd grown up with. The David I remembered was protective and supportive, even when we disagreed. He was the one who'd helped me with my homework when I struggled with math in high school. He was the one who'd driven me to job interviews when my car broke down during college. He was the one who'd celebrated with me when I got hired at Mitchell Construction, talking about how great it would be to work together and eventually take over the business from Dad. That David seemed to have disappeared, replaced by this cold corporate version who spoke in HR buzzwords and treated family relationships like employee evaluations. Does Dad know about this? I asked quietly. David nodded. I discussed it with him yesterday. He agrees that we need employees who are fully committed to our existing culture and values. He supports my decision. The betrayal was complete. Not only was my brother firing me, but my father, the man who taught me about hard work and dedication, who'd brought me into the business specifically because he wanted family involved, had signed off on my termination for being disloyal to the very values he'd instilled in me. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling unsteady. I want to hear this from Dad directly. That's not necessary, David said. As head of human resources, I have full authority over personnel decisions. This conversation is over, but it wasn't over for me. I needed to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. I needed to know if Dad really believed I was disloyal, or if David had somehow convinced him that my marketing initiatives were a threat to the company culture. Most importantly, I needed to know if there was any way to salvage not just my job, but my relationship with my family. I walked directly from David's office to Dad's corner suite, my hands trembling as I carried the termination papers. The hallway seemed longer than usual, each step echoing off the polished concrete floors that Dad was so proud of. Employees I'd worked alongside for 3 years looked up from their desks as I passed, and I wondered if they could see the shock and devastation written across my face. Dad's assistant, Maria, had been with the company for 8 years and knew our family dynamics better than most. She took one look at me and immediately buzzed Dad's intercom. "Mr. Mitchell, Sarah needs to see you right away." "Send her in," came Dad's familiar voice through the speaker. I pushed open the heavy oak door to find Dad standing behind his massive desk, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the construction equipment in our yard below. He was wearing his usual uniform of khaki pants and a Mitchell construction polo shirt, his silver hair perfectly combed despite the early hour. At 58, Robert Mitchell still looked like he could handle a full day of physical labor, though he'd transitioned to purely administrative work years ago. "Sarah, sweetheart, what's wrong?" he asked, turning toward me with the concerned expression I remembered from childhood's scraped knees and teenage heartbreaks. I held up the termination papers, my voice catching in my throat. "Dad, David just fired me. He says you approved it. He says I'm disloyal to family values. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake." Dad's expression shifted, the warmth draining from his eyes as he glanced at the documents in my hand. He walked around his desk and gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his workspace. "Sarah, sit down. Let's talk about this." The fact that he didn't immediately contradict David's claims sent a chill through my chest. I remained standing, clutching the papers. "Dad, just tell me, you didn't really approve of David firing me from our family business." He sighed heavily and settled into his own chair. "Sarah, David came to me with some concerning information about your activities outside the company. Some articles you've written, some statements you've made publicly about traditional business practices. He feels, and I'm starting to agree, that you're more interested in promoting your own ideas than in supporting what we've built here." The words felt like physical blows. This was my father, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd attended every school play and graduation ceremony, who'd hired me into the family business with pride and excitement. Now he was telling me that my passion for helping the company succeed was actually disloyalty. "Dad, everything I've done has been for this company. Every article I've written, every marketing proposal, every late night I've spent researching digital strategies, it's all been because I love what we've built, and I want to see it thrive for another 25 years. Dad leaned forward, his expression softening slightly. "Sarah, I know you think you're helping, but sweetheart, you have to understand something. This company wasn't built on social media and fancy marketing campaigns. It was built on handshakes and hard work, and delivering what we promise. When you go online and write about how traditional industries need to change, or they'll become obsolete, you're essentially saying that everything I've done for the past quarter century is worthless." "That's not what I'm saying at all," I protested, finally sinking into the chair across from him. "I'm saying that what you've built is so valuable, so solid, that we should be sharing it with more people. The traditional approaches that made us successful, quality work, reliable service, honest relationships, those aren't obsolete. But the ways we communicate those values to potential clients, that's what needs to evolve." Dad shook his head slowly. "But that's where you're wrong, Sarah. The way we communicate our values is part of our values. When I meet a potential client face to face, when I shake their hand and look them in the eye, when I invite them to visit our previous job sites and talk to our satisfied customers, that's not just marketing, that's how we build trust. That's how we establish the kind of long-term relationships that sustain a business." I could see the fundamental disconnect between our perspectives, and it broke my heart. Dad viewed my digital marketing efforts as a rejection of his relationship-based approach, when I saw them as a way to scale and amplify that same approach. "Dad, I'm not suggesting we stop meeting clients face-to-face or building personal relationships. I'm suggesting we use digital tools to find more of the right clients to meet face-to-face with. But who decides who the right clients are? Dad asked pointedly. Sarah, we've been successful because we work with people who value what we value. They understand that quality takes time, that good work costs more than cheap work, that relationships matter more than contracts. The kind of clients you're trying to attract with all this social media stuff, they're looking for the flashiest presentation and the lowest bid. That's not our market. The conversation was spiraling in exactly the direction I'd feared. Dad wasn't just rejecting my marketing ideas, he was rejecting my fundamental understanding of where our industry was heading. He saw digital marketing as a tool for attracting the wrong kind of clients, while I saw it as essential for reaching the right kind of clients who were increasingly making decisions based on online research and digital relationships. Dad, can I show you something? I asked, pulling out my phone. Let me show you some of the companies that are winning the contracts we've been losing. I pulled up the Instagram account for Desert Modern Builders, one of our main competitors. Their feed showcased stunning before and after photos of commercial projects, time-lapse videos of construction processes, and testimonials from satisfied clients. They had 40,000 followers and consistently featured projects that were exactly the type of work Mitchell Construction was capable of handling. Look at this project, I said, showing him a sleek office building they'd completed 6 months ago. This is the kind of work we do better than anyone. But the client chose Desert Modern because they found them online, they could see their portfolio immediately, and they felt confident about their capabilities before ever meeting in person. Dad glanced at my phone screen but didn't take it. Sarah, that's exactly my point. If a client chooses their construction company based on Instagram photos, they're not the kind of client we want to work with. They're choosing style over substance, image over reality. No, Dad, they're doing their research. They're being smart consumers. This client didn't choose Desert Modern just because of their Instagram photos. They chose them because the photos demonstrated competence, reliability, and attention to detail. The digital presence gave the client confidence to take the next step of meeting in person and reviewing references. Dad stood up and walked back to his window, looking out at the equipment yard, where several crews were loading trucks for the day's projects. Sarah, I've been in this business for 25 years. I've seen trends come and go. I've watched companies chase every new marketing fad and lose sight of what actually matters. What matters is showing up on time, doing quality work, and treating people with respect. Everything else is just noise. I joined him at the window, looking out at the same view that had inspired me countless times over the past 3 years. Dad, what if both things can be true? What if we can maintain our commitment to quality and relationships, while also communicating those values more effectively to a broader audience? For a moment I thought I saw him considering my perspective. Then he turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, disappointment mixed with resignation. Sarah, here's what I think has happened. You've gotten so caught up in all this marketing theory and digital strategy that you've lost sight of what actually makes a business successful. You're more interested in being seen as an expert than in actually learning the business. The accusation hit harder than anything David had said. Dad, that's not fair. I've spent 3 years learning every aspect of this business. I know our suppliers, our subcontractors, our clients, our processes. I've been on job sites. I've sat in on project meetings. I've handled customer service issues. I haven't just been sitting in an office writing marketing posts. But that's exactly what you want to do, Dad said quietly. You want to turn this company into a social media brand. You want to make us famous instead of just making us good at what we do. I felt tears starting to form, but I forced them back. This conversation was too important to let emotion derail it. Dad, I want to make us both. I want us to be excellent at what we do, and for people to know about that excellence. I want the next generation of business owners in Phoenix to think of Mitchell Construction first when they need our services. I want us to be so well regarded and so well known that we can choose our projects instead of competing desperately for every bid. Dad was quiet for a long moment, and I hoped that meant he was actually considering what I'd said. Finally he spoke. Sarah, I think the problem is that you see this as a choice between growing or staying stagnant, but I see it as a choice between staying true to our values or compromising them for growth. And I'd rather run a smaller company with integrity than a larger company that's forgotten what made it successful in the first place. I realized then that we weren't just having a disagreement about marketing strategies. We were having a fundamental philosophical debate about business, growth, integrity, and change. Dad viewed my initiatives as a threat to the company's core identity, while I viewed his resistance to change as a threat to the company's future viability. So you really think I should be fired? I asked directly. Dad returned to his chair, suddenly looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. Sarah, I think you're incredibly talented and passionate, but I also think you're trying to turn this company into something it's not meant to be. David is right that there's a misalignment here. You want to work for a cutting-edge digital marketing company that happens to be in the construction business. We are a construction company that needs some basic marketing support. Dad, that's not what I want at all. I want to work for Mitchell Construction, the company you built, the company that does incredible work and employs 150 people and contributes to our community. I just want to help more people discover what we're capable of. He picked up a pen from his desk and rolled it between his fingers, a nervous habit I'd noticed since childhood. Sarah, let me ask you something. If you could start your own marketing company tomorrow and work with any clients you wanted, would you choose to stay here and work on construction industry marketing? The question caught me off guard, because the honest answer was complicated.
Loved marketing, and I definitely developed expertise that could be valuable across multiple industries. But the reason I'd focused on construction marketing wasn't just because it was the family business. It was because I genuinely believed that traditional industries like construction were underserved by typical marketing agencies and had tremendous opportunities for improvement. Dad, I'd want to work with clients who needed what I could offer. And what I can offer is helping established, quality-driven companies connect with new audiences without compromising their core values. Mitchell Construction is exactly the kind of company I'd want to work with, whether it was family-owned or not. But you'd also want to work with other companies, wouldn't you? You'd want to build your own client base and your own reputation. I hesitated, because again the honest answer was yes. I'd always imagined that as I gained experience and expertise, I might eventually start my own consultancy or join a larger marketing firm. But that didn't mean I wasn't committed to Mitchell Construction's success. Dad, wanting to grow professionally doesn't mean I'm not committed to this company. David has his MBA and could work anywhere, but he chose to build his career here. Why is my professional development seen as disloyalty while his is seen as an asset? Dad set down his pen and looked directly at me. Because David's career goals align with the company's needs. He wants to build efficient systems and manage personnel and create stability. Your career goals seem to require changing what the company is. I felt the conversation slipping away from me, but I couldn't give up. Dad, what if there was a way for me to pursue my professional goals while also serving the company's needs? What if there was a way to grow my marketing expertise while helping Mitchell Construction reach new levels of success? Sarah, I've watched you for 3 years. Every marketing proposal you've submitted has been about doing something we've never done before. You've never once suggested improving our existing marketing efforts. You've never once tried to optimize our current referral systems or strengthen our relationships with existing clients. Everything has been about change, about innovation, about disruption. The criticism stung because it contained a grain of truth. I had been focused on introducing new strategies rather than improving existing ones. But that was because our existing marketing efforts were so minimal that there wasn't much to optimize. We had a basic website that hadn't been updated in 2 years, we occasionally printed brochures, and we relied almost entirely on word-of-mouth referrals and Dad's personal networking. Dad, the reason I've focused on new strategies is because we don't really have existing marketing systems to improve. We have networking and referrals, which are great and should continue. But we don't have any systematic way of reaching new audiences or showcasing our capabilities to potential clients who don't already know us. And that's worked fine for 25 years, Dad said firmly. Sarah, we've never had trouble finding clients. We've never had trouble staying busy. We've built a solid reputation and a sustainable business without social media or content marketing or any of the other things you think we need. I could see that we were talking in circles, each of us convinced that our perspective was correct and unable to find common ground. But I had to try one more approach. Dad, what if we're both right? What if your traditional methods have been perfect for getting us to where we are? And what if digital methods are necessary for getting us to where we could be? Dad stood up again, and I could see that the conversation was coming to an end. Sarah, I think the real issue is that you're not satisfied with where we are. You see our current success as insufficient. You see our current approach as inadequate. And that fundamental dissatisfaction with what we've accomplished is what David means by disloyalty to family values. The accusation was devastating because it was so completely wrong, yet I could see how my passion for growth and improvement might be interpreted as dissatisfaction with existing achievements. Dad, I'm incredibly proud of what you've built. I'm proud to be part of this family and this company. My desire to help us grow comes from love and admiration, not from dissatisfaction or disloyalty. Dad walked to his office door and opened it. A clear signal that our conversation was over. Sarah, I think you need to take some time to figure out what you really want. Maybe some time away from the company will help you gain perspective on whether this is really where you belong. I stood slowly, still holding the termination papers that had started this entire conversation. So David's decision stands. I'm really fired. Dad nodded, though I could see that the decision was causing him pain. Sarah, I support David's decision. I think it's best for everyone if you take some time to explore other opportunities and figure out what you really want to do with your career. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back to him. Dad, I want you to know that I love you and I love this company, regardless of what happens next. And I hope someday you'll understand that everything I've tried to do has been motivated by that love. His expression softened slightly. Sarah, I love you too, and I hope someday you'll understand that protecting what we've built is also motivated by love. I left his office feeling more confused and hurt than when I'd entered. The conversation had clarified that this wasn't just a misunderstanding or a communication problem. This was a fundamental philosophical divide about business growth and what constituted loyalty to family values. Dad genuinely believed that my marketing initiatives represented a threat to the company's integrity, while I genuinely believed that his resistance to change represented a threat to the company's future. As I walked back through the office to collect my personal belongings from my desk, I tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 2 hours, I'd gone from being a valued member of the family business to being an outsider who'd been formally terminated for disloyalty. The speed and finality of it was overwhelming. My desk was located in an open area near the customer service representatives and project coordinators. As I began packing my personal items into a cardboard box that Maria had quietly provided, I became aware that the entire office was watching me. Word had apparently spread quickly that something significant was happening, and the combination of my obvious distress and the presence of a packing box made the situation clear to everyone. Tom Rodriguez, our operations manager and one of Dad's oldest friends, approached my desk cautiously. Tom had been with the company for 12 years and had always been supportive of my marketing efforts, even when Dad seemed skeptical. Sarah, what's going on? Are you okay? I looked up from packing my Arizona State coffee mug and forced a smile. I'm fine, Tom. I've decided to pursue some new opportunities outside the company. Tom's expression made it clear that he didn't believe my diplomatic explanation. Sarah, if there's some kind of problem or misunderstanding, maybe I could talk to your dad. You've been doing good work here and we're going to miss your energy and ideas. His kindness almost broke down the emotional walls I'd been building to get through this day. Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate that. But I think this is the right decision for everyone involved. As I continued packing, other colleagues stopped by to express confusion and concern. Jennifer from accounting mentioned that she'd been looking forward to seeing my latest marketing presentation. Carlos from project management said he'd been hoping we'd start using some of the digital tools I'd recommended for client communication. Mark from estimating asked if this had anything to do with the social media guidelines David had recently implemented. Each conversation reinforced my belief that I hadn't been operating in isolation. Other people within the company had seen value in my marketing initiatives and had been hoping for the kind of modernization I'd been advocating. But apparently their opinions carried less weight than David's concerns about company culture and Dad's fears about compromising traditional values. By noon I'd finished packing and was ready to leave Mitchell Construction for what I assumed would be the last time. As I carried my box of personal belongings toward the exit, I passed David's office and saw him on the phone, probably discussing personnel matters with someone. He looked up as I walked by, and for just a moment I saw something in his expression that might have been regret or uncertainty. But the moment passed quickly, and he returned to his conversation without acknowledging me. I loaded my belongings into my Honda Civic and sat in the parking lot for several minutes, trying to figure out what to do next. I'd been fired from my job, estranged from my family, and branded as disloyal to the values I thought I'd been serving. The marketing presentation I'd spent weeks preparing would never be delivered. The digital strategies I'd researched and developed would never be implemented. The vision I'd had for helping Mitchell Construction reach new levels of success would never be tested. But as I sat there in the Arizona sunshine, looking back at the building that had been my professional home for 3 years, I realized something important. I still believed in everything I'd been advocating. I still believed that traditional businesses could benefit from digital marketing strategies. I still believed that quality companies deserve to reach broader audiences. I still believed that innovation and tradition could coexist successfully. The difference was that now I'd have to prove those beliefs somewhere else, with someone else's company for someone else's benefit. Mitchell Construction had been my laboratory for testing these ideas, but it wouldn't be my only opportunity to demonstrate their value. I started my car and drove away from the industrial complex, heading toward my downtown Phoenix apartment and an uncertain future. I had no job, no immediate prospects, and a family that viewed my professional passions as fundamentally disloyal. But I also had 3 years of experience, a portfolio of marketing strategies that I still believed in, and a determination to prove that my vision for bridging traditional business practices with modern marketing methods was not only valid but essential for long-term success. The drive home gave me time to think about what had really happened and what it meant for my future. I'd been fired for disloyalty to family values, but I'd been fired by people who'd fundamentally misunderstood what loyalty meant to me. To me, loyalty meant wanting the best possible outcomes for the people and organizations I cared about. It meant working hard to help them succeed and grow and thrive. It meant challenging them when I thought they were making mistakes that could hurt their long-term interests. Apparently to David and Dad, loyalty meant accepting existing approaches without question, supporting current strategies regardless of their effectiveness, and prioritizing harmony over growth. Those were valid values, but they weren't my values, and they weren't the values I thought would serve Mitchell Construction well in an increasingly competitive marketplace. As I pulled into my apartment complex, I made a decision that would shape everything that came next. I wasn't going to spend time feeling sorry for myself or questioning whether I'd been wrong to push for change. Instead, I was going to prove that my marketing strategies could work by finding clients who were ready to embrace them. I was going to build my own success story, and maybe someday, that success would speak louder than any family meeting or termination letter ever could. The first week after being fired from Mitchell Construction felt like living in a strange alternate reality. I'd wake up each morning at 7, automatically reaching for my work clothes before remembering that I had nowhere to go. My downtown Phoenix apartment, which had always been my evening retreat from the demands of the family business, suddenly felt like a prison where I was trapped with my own thoughts and uncertainty. I spent those initial days alternating between anger and self-doubt, reviewing every conversation I'd had with David and Dad, searching for clues about where things had gone wrong. Had I been too aggressive in pushing my marketing ideas? Had I somehow communicated disrespect for the company's traditional approaches? Was there validity to their concerns about my loyalty and commitment? By the 4th day, I decided that endless self-analysis wasn't going to change anything. If David and Dad were convinced that my vision for modernizing the company was fundamentally incompatible with their values, then I needed to prove that vision was valuable somewhere else. I opened my laptop and began researching Phoenix's construction and contracting industry, looking for companies that might be more receptive to innovative marketing approaches. What I discovered was both encouraging and validating. Phoenix was experiencing unprecedented growth, with new residential developments, commercial complexes, and infrastructure projects launching constantly. The construction industry was booming, but it was also becoming increasingly competitive. Traditional companies like Mitchell Construction were competing not just with each other, but with newer firms that understood digital marketing, social media presence, and modern client acquisition strategies. I created a spreadsheet listing every construction company, general contractor, and specialty contractor in the Phoenix metropolitan area, along with notes about their current marketing approaches, online presence, and potential areas for improvement. The research took me 3 full days, but it confirmed what I'd been trying to tell Dad for months. Most established construction companies had minimal digital presence, outdated websites, and no systematic approach to reaching new audiences. More importantly, I found dozens of companies that were clearly struggling with the same challenges Mitchell Construction faced. Their work quality appeared excellent based on the limited information available, but their ability to communicate that quality to potential clients was severely limited. They were relying on the same word-of-mouth and traditional networking approaches that had worked 20 years ago, but weren't sufficient in today's competitive landscape. I began reaching out to these companies with carefully crafted emails, introducing myself as a marketing specialist with extensive experience in the construction industry. I offered to provide free initial consultations to assess their current marketing effectiveness and identify opportunities for improvement. My approach was respectful of traditional methods while clearly articulating the benefits of digital enhancement. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within a week, I'd received positive replies from 15 companies expressing interest in learning more about modern marketing strategies. Construction company owners and managers who'd been struggling to compete with flashier competitors were eager to explore new approaches that could help them showcase their quality and reliability more effectively. My first consultation was with Desert Valley Contractors, a mid-sized company specializing in commercial renovations. The owner, Miguel Santos, had built the business over 15 years and was frustrated by recent losses to competitors he considered inferior. "Sarah," he told me during our meeting at his modest office, "I know we do better work than these new companies that are winning all the big contracts. But somehow they're getting in front of the right clients first, and by the time potential customers find us, they've already made their decisions." Miguel's situation was exactly what I'd been trying to help Mitchell Construction avoid. He had an excellent reputation among existing clients, strong relationships with suppliers and subcontractors, and a track record of delivering projects on time and under budget. But he had no systematic way of reaching new audiences, or demonstrating his capabilities to potential clients who didn't already know his company. I spent 2 hours with Miguel, reviewing his current marketing efforts and explaining how digital strategies could amplify his existing strengths without compromising his commitment to quality relationships. I showed him examples of construction companies in other markets that had successfully integrated social media, content marketing, and digital advertising with their traditional business practices. "This makes perfect sense," Miguel said, reviewing the materials I'd prepared. "I'd been thinking that I needed to choose between old-school relationship building and modern marketing. But what you're showing me is how to use modern tools to build more relationships." Exactly. That was precisely the message I'd been trying to communicate to Dad and David. Digital marketing wasn't a replacement for relationship-based business practices. It was a way to scale and enhance those practices. Social media platforms could showcase the quality of work that previously only existing clients could see. Content marketing could demonstrate expertise and reliability to audiences who might never have heard of the company otherwise. Miguel became my first official client, contracting with me to develop and implement a comprehensive digital marketing strategy for Desert Valley Contractors. The project would include website redesign, social media presence development, content creation, and targeted digital advertising. It was exactly the kind of work I'd wanted to do for Mitchell Construction, but now I was doing it for someone who genuinely appreciated its value. Over the next month, I signed contracts with 4 additional construction companies, each facing similar challenges and eager to explore modern marketing approaches. I was working longer hours than I ever had at Mitchell Construction, but the work felt energizing rather than draining because I was finally able to implement the strategies I'd been developing and researching for years. The results were remarkable and immediate. Within 6 weeks of launching Desert Valley Contractors' digital presence, Miguel was receiving inquiries from potential clients who'd found him through online searches and social media platforms. His website traffic increased by 300%, and more importantly, the quality of incoming leads was excellent. These weren't bargain hunters looking for the cheapest possible option. They were serious clients who'd researched his company online and were impressed by the quality of work showcased in his digital portfolio. "Sarah, this is incredible," Miguel told me during one of our regular check-in meetings. "I just signed the biggest contract in my company's history, and the client told me they chose us because our online presence demonstrated exactly the kind of professionalism and attention to detail they were looking for." Similar success stories were emerging with my other clients. Sunset Electrical, a specialty contractor I'd started working with, landed a major hospital project after the facilities manager found their newly created LinkedIn content about emergency electrical systems. Phoenix Masonry saw a 250% increase in consultation requests after I helped them develop an Instagram presence showcasing their craftsmanship on high-end residential projects. Each success reinforced my conviction that I'd been right about the potential for digital marketing to enhance traditional construction business practices. These companies weren't abandoning their commitment to quality work and relationship building. They were using digital tools to connect with more of the right kinds of clients who appreciated those values. But even as my independent consulting practice began to thrive, I couldn't stop thinking about Mitchell Construction. Every successful campaign I developed for other companies reminded me of what we could have accomplished together. Every client who expressed gratitude for helping them reach new audiences made me think about the opportunities Dad was missing by refusing to embrace change. 3 months after being fired, I was earning more money than I'd ever made in my life, working with clients who respected my expertise, and building a reputation as someone who could help traditional construction companies succeed in competitive markets. I should have been completely satisfied with how things had turned out. Instead, I found myself driving past Mitchell Construction's headquarters on my way to client meetings, wondering how the company was performing, and whether David and Dad ever thought about the marketing strategies I'd proposed. I'd check their basic website occasionally, hoping to see signs that they'd decided to pursue some kind of digital presence, but it remained unchanged from when I'd worked there. The emotional complexity of my situation came into sharp focus when my cousin Jake Rodriguez called me on a Thursday evening in March. Jake was a graphic designer who'd always been supportive of my marketing ideas, and he was one of the few family members who'd stayed in touch with me since the firing. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," Jake said, his voice unusually serious. "I was talking to my mom yesterday, and she mentioned that things aren't going great at Mitchell Construction. They've lost several major bids in the past month, and your dad is starting to worry about the company's competitive position." My heart sank. This was exactly what I'd been afraid would happen. What kind of bids did they lose? Big commercial projects, the kind they usually win easily. My mom said your dad mentioned that the clients are going with younger companies that have better presentations and stronger online presence. I felt a complicated mix of vindication and sadness. I'd been right about the challenges Mitchell Construction would face without modernizing their marketing approach. But being right didn't make me happy when it meant my family's business was struggling. "Jake, do you think there's any chance Dad would consider bringing me back, or at least having a conversation about digital marketing strategies?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, I don't think he's ready to admit that he made a mistake. And David has been doubling down on the traditional approaches, insisting that they just need to work harder at networking and referral building." That night I lay awake thinking about the irony of my situation. I was succeeding professionally beyond my wildest expectations, helping multiple companies achieve exactly the kind of growth and competitive advantages I'd wanted to create for Mitchell Construction. But the company I cared most about, the business that represented my family's legacy, was struggling with precisely the challenges I'd trained myself to solve. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. I drafted a detailed email to Dad, not asking for my job back, or trying to rehash our previous arguments, but simply offering to share some insights about current market trends and competitive strategies. I attached case studies from my work with other construction companies, showing concrete examples of how digital marketing had helped traditional businesses maintain their values while expanding their reach. I wrote and rewrote the email dozens of times, trying to strike the right tone. I wanted to be helpful without being condescending, confident without being arrogant, informative without being preachy. The final version was professional and respectful, focusing entirely on business benefits rather than personal grievances. "Dad," I wrote, "I've been working with several construction companies over the past few months, helping them adapt their marketing strategies to current market conditions. I've learned a lot about what's working and what isn't in our industry right now. I thought you might find some of these insights valuable, regardless of our personal situation. If you'd like to discuss any of these approaches, I'd be happy to share what I've learned." I attached detailed case studies showing how companies similar to Mitchell Construction had successfully integrated digital marketing with their traditional business practices, including specific revenue increases, client acquisition metrics, and testimonials from satisfied customers. The materials demonstrated clear return on investment and addressed most of the concerns Dad had expressed about digital marketing being incompatible with relationship-based business practices. I sent the email on a Friday afternoon and tried not to think about whether or how Dad might respond. I'd done what I could to extend an olive branch and offer valuable information. Whether he chose to accept the gesture was beyond my control. Dad's response came 3 days later, and it was shorter than I'd hoped but more positive than I'd expected. "Sarah, thank you for sharing these materials. The results you've achieved with other companies are impressive. I'd like to learn more about how these strategies might apply to our situation. Would you be available for lunch next week to discuss?" I read the email 5 times, trying to interpret every word choice and punctuation mark. Was this a genuine invitation to share my expertise, or was it Dad's way of trying to repair our personal relationship without actually embracing change? Was he really interested in implementing digital marketing strategies, or was he just curious about what I'd been doing since leaving the company? Regardless of his motivations, I was grateful for the opportunity to have a substantive conversation about business strategy rather than philosophical disagreements about loyalty and family values. I agreed to meet him the following Tuesday at a restaurant near his office, neutral territory where we could focus on professional rather than personal issues. The prospect of seeing Dad again, especially in a context where he was explicitly asking for my advice, filled me with a mixture of hope and anxiety. I'd proven that my marketing strategies could work for other companies, but implementing them at Mitchell Construction would require Dad to acknowledge that his previous resistance had been misguided. More importantly, it would require David to accept that the sister he'd fired for disloyalty might actually have been trying to help the company all along. I spent the weekend preparing for the lunch meeting, reviewing all the research and case studies I'd developed, anticipating potential objections, and planning how to present digital marketing strategies in ways that complemented rather than threatened Mitchell Construction's traditional strengths. This wasn't just an opportunity to share my expertise, it was potentially a chance to prove that innovation and tradition could coexist successfully. That loyalty to family values could include embracing necessary changes to ensure the family business survived and thrived. The lunch meeting would determine whether the past 3 months had been a painful but temporary separation, or the permanent end of my involvement with the company Dad had built, and I'd always hoped to help grow. Either way, I was ready to demonstrate that my commitment to Mitchell Construction's success had never wavered, even when my methods had been misunderstood, and my motivations had been
questioned. As I reviewed my presentation materials one final time, I realized that regardless of what happened with Mitchell Construction, the past 3 months had taught me something valuable about myself and my capabilities. I'd proven that I could succeed independently, that my marketing strategies created real value for real companies, and that my vision for bridging traditional business practices with modern tools was not only valid, but increasingly essential in competitive markets. That knowledge gave me confidence as I prepared to face Dad again, not as his daughter seeking approval or forgiveness, but as a marketing professional with demonstrated expertise and concrete solutions to offer. Whether he chose to accept those solutions would determine the future of our business relationship, but it wouldn't change the fact that I'd already proven my worth in the marketplace that ultimately mattered most. The restaurant Dad chose for our lunch meeting was Antonio's, a family-owned Italian place where Mitchell Construction had celebrated major contract wins for years. As I walked through the familiar entrance, memories of company parties and family gatherings flooded back. The hostess recognized me immediately and led me to a corner booth where Dad was already waiting, reviewing what appeared to be financial documents. He looked up as I approached, and for the first time in months I saw something other than disappointment in his expression. There was curiosity there, maybe even a hint of respect. "Sarah, you look good. Success seems to be agreeing with you." I slid into the booth across from him, noting that he'd chosen to sit where we could spread out papers and have a working conversation rather than just a social meal. "Thanks, Dad. It's been an interesting few months." We ordered quickly, both of us eager to get to the substance of why we were meeting. Dad pulled out a manila folder containing printouts of the case studies I'd sent him, along with handwritten notes in the margins. He'd clearly studied the materials thoroughly. "Sarah, these results you've shown with other companies are impressive. Miguel Santos called me yesterday, actually. We've known each other for years through the Contractors Association, and he couldn't stop talking about the transformation you've helped him achieve. He said his company has never been busier or more profitable." The fact that Dad had independently verified my work with Miguel meant more to me than any formal recognition could have. Miguel's been a pleasure to work with. He understood immediately that digital marketing could enhance rather than replace his traditional business practices. Dad nodded slowly. "That's what I'm starting to realize I may have misunderstood about your proposals. When you talked about social media and digital strategies, I heard criticism of everything we'd built. But looking at what you've accomplished with companies like Desert Valley Contractors, I can see that you've actually helped them showcase their traditional strengths to broader audiences." This was the conversation I'd been hoping to have for years. Dad was finally seeing digital marketing as a tool for amplifying existing values rather than abandoning them. Exactly. The goal was never to change what Mitchell Construction does well, it was to help more people discover and appreciate what you've built. Dad spread out several of my case studies across the table. "Walk me through how this would work for us specifically. What would a Mitchell Construction digital presence look like?" I pulled out my laptop and opened a presentation I'd prepared specifically for this possibility. Over the next hour, I showed Dad detailed mock-ups of what Mitchell Construction's Instagram account could feature, from behind-the-scenes construction processes to completed project showcases to employee spotlights that highlighted the craftsmanship and dedication that defined the company culture. "We could create content that tells the story of what makes Mitchell Construction special," I explained, clicking through examples. "Time-lapse videos of your crews transforming vacant lots into beautiful commercial spaces. Interviews with longtime employees talking about their pride in the quality standards you've established. Before and after showcases that demonstrate not just the visual transformation, but the functionality and durability that set your work apart." Dad leaned forward, studying the screen intently. "This actually looks like us."
I was expecting something flashy and superficial, but this feels authentic. Because it is authentic. The best marketing always is. We wouldn't be creating a false image of Mitchell Construction. We'd be sharing the real story that your existing clients already know and love. For the first time since I'd been fired, I felt genuine optimism about the possibility of working with my family's business again. Dad was asking thoughtful questions, engaging with the strategic details, and showing real interest in implementation timelines and budget requirements. Then his phone rang. "Excuse me, Sarah, this is David calling from the office." Dad answered the call, and I could hear my brother's voice through the speaker, though I couldn't make out the specific words. Dad's expression shifted as he listened, the openness and curiosity I'd been seeing, replaced by something more guarded. "I see," Dad said into the phone. "Yes, we'll discuss this when I get back to the office." He hung up and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sarah, I need to ask you something directly. Are you currently working with any companies that might be considered competitors to Mitchell Construction?" The question caught me off guard, though I should have anticipated it. "Dad, I work with construction companies throughout the Phoenix area. Some of them probably bid on similar projects occasionally, but I wouldn't characterize any of them as direct competitors. They're mostly smaller specialty contractors or companies that focus on different market segments." "What about Horizon Commercial Construction?" My stomach dropped. Horizon Commercial was a mid-sized company that I'd started working with 6 weeks ago, and they did operate in a similar market segment to Mitchell Construction. More problematically, I'd recently helped them win a major office complex project that I knew Mitchell Construction had also bid on. "Yes, I work with Horizon. But Dad, when I took them on as a client, I had no way of knowing which specific projects they'd be bidding on. And I certainly never shared any proprietary information about Mitchell Construction's processes or pricing strategies." Dad's expression had hardened considerably. "David just received a call from Jim Peterson at Horizon. Apparently Jim was bragging to some mutual contacts about how his new marketing consultant had helped him put together a proposal presentation that was far superior to anything Mitchell Construction had submitted. Jim specifically mentioned that his consultant had deep knowledge of traditional construction companies' weaknesses when it came to client communication." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'd never spoken negatively about Mitchell Construction to any of my clients, and I'd certainly never shared inside information that could give them competitive advantages. But I could see how my general expertise about traditional construction marketing limitations could be interpreted as specific knowledge about my family's company. "Dad, I promise you I never said anything disparaging about Mitchell Construction, and I never shared any inside information. When I work with clients, I help them understand general industry trends and common challenges that most traditional companies face. I would never compromise Mitchell Construction's competitive position." "But you did help Horizon win a contract that we lost," Dad said quietly. "You helped them create a better presentation than we could create. You gave them capabilities that we don't have. How is that not working against your family's interests?" The accusation was devastating, because it contained enough truth to be believable while completely mischaracterizing my intentions. Yes, I'd helped Horizon develop a more compelling proposal presentation. Yes, my marketing expertise had probably contributed to their success in winning the project. But I'd never viewed it as working against Mitchell Construction because I'd never intended to work against Mitchell Construction. "Dad, when I started my consulting practice, I hoped it would be temporary. I hoped that proving my strategies could work would eventually lead to an opportunity to implement them at Mitchell Construction. I never wanted to be competing against our family business." "But that's exactly what you're doing," Dad said, his voice getting louder. "You're using the knowledge and experience you gained at our company to help our competitors beat us. You're taking contracts away from the business that employed you, trained you and trusted you with confidential information about our operations." I could see that the conversation was spiraling beyond any possibility of productive resolution. David's phone call had reframed my consulting success from a demonstration of valuable expertise into evidence of betrayal and competitive sabotage. The lunch that had started with such promise was ending with accusations that felt even more hurtful than the original firing. "Dad, I understand why this looks problematic from your perspective. But please believe me when I tell you that helping other companies succeed was never about hurting Mitchell Construction. It was about proving that my marketing strategies could work so that maybe, someday I could help our family business succeed too." Dad began gathering up the case studies and financial documents he'd brought to the meeting. Sarah, I think I made a mistake in agreeing to this meeting. David was right to be concerned about your loyalty. You're not just working for competitors, you're actively helping them beat us. Dad, please don't leave like this. Let me explain how we could work together moving forward. I could stop taking clients that compete directly with Mitchell Construction. I could focus my practice on specialty contractors that operate in different market segments. We could find a way to make this work that benefits everyone. But Dad was already standing up, clearly finished with the conversation. Sarah, the problem isn't which clients you work with going forward. The problem is that you've already demonstrated that your primary loyalty is to your own career success rather than to your family's business. David was right about your character, and I was wrong to think otherwise. He left money on the table for both our meals and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting alone with my laptop still open to the Mitchell Construction marketing presentation I'd spent hours perfecting. The irony was overwhelming. I'd finally gotten the opportunity to present my ideas to Dad in a context where he was genuinely receptive, only to have that opportunity destroyed by the success I'd achieved proving those ideas worked. I sat in the booth for another 20 minutes, trying to process what had just happened and what it meant for any possibility of reconciling with my family. Dad's accusation about divided loyalty wasn't entirely wrong. I had built a successful consulting practice that included companies competing with Mitchell Construction. I had helped Horizon win a contract that Mitchell Construction lost. I had used knowledge and experience gained at the family business to benefit other organizations. But his interpretation of my motivations was completely wrong. Every success I'd achieved with other clients had been motivated by my desire to prove that digital marketing strategies could work for traditional construction companies. Every contract I'd helped other companies win had been intended as a demonstration of what Mitchell Construction could achieve if they embraced similar approaches. The gap between my intentions and the impact of my actions was apparently unbridgeable. Dad would always see my consulting practice as evidence of disloyalty, regardless of my true motivations. David would always view my success with competitors as confirmation that I'd never been genuinely committed to the family business. The philosophical divide that had led to my original firing had only widened during the months I'd spent proving my worth elsewhere. Over the following weeks, I threw myself into my consulting work with renewed intensity, partly to distract myself from the disappointment of the failed reconciliation, and partly to prove that I could build something valuable entirely independent of my family's approval. My client base expanded to include companies throughout Arizona and New Mexico, and my reputation as a specialist in construction industry marketing began attracting attention from business organizations and industry publications. 2 months after the disastrous lunch with Dad, I received an invitation to speak at the Southwest Construction Industry Conference in Las Vegas, a major annual event that brought together contractors, suppliers, and service providers from across the region. The speaking opportunity was a significant professional milestone, representing recognition from industry peers and potential access to an even broader client base. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd be speaking about digital marketing strategies for traditional construction companies at an event that Dad and David had attended every year for the past decade. There was a good chance they'd be in the audience when I delivered my presentation, which would create an awkward situation for everyone involved. But I couldn't let family dynamics interfere with professional opportunities. I accepted the speaking engagement and spent weeks preparing a presentation titled Bridging Tradition and Innovation: How Established Construction Companies Can Thrive in Digital Markets. The presentation would showcase studies from my consulting work, including specific revenue increases and client acquisition improvements achieved by companies that had embraced digital marketing strategies. The conference was held at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center, and my session was scheduled for the second day in one of the larger meeting rooms. As I set up my presentation materials, I scanned the audience and immediately spotted Dad and David sitting together about halfway back, their expressions unreadable. For a moment I considered acknowledging their presence or modifying my presentation to avoid potential embarrassment. Then I remembered why I was there: to share valuable information with construction industry professionals who could benefit from digital marketing strategies. If Dad and David chose to attend my session, they'd hear the same practical, results-focused content I'd been trying to share with them for years. My presentation went exceptionally well. The audience was engaged and asked thoughtful questions about implementation timelines, budget requirements, and measuring return on investment. Several attendees approached me afterward to discuss potential consulting engagements, and multiple people commented that my approach seemed particularly well suited for traditional companies that wanted to modernize without losing their core identity. As the crowd dispersed, I saw Dad and David making their way toward the front of the room. My heart rate increased as they approached, unsure whether they intended to congratulate me, confront me, or simply acknowledge my presence professionally. "Sarah," Dad said when they reached the stage area, "that was an impressive presentation. You've clearly developed real expertise in this field." "Thank you," I replied cautiously, looking between Dad and David for clues about their intentions. David stepped forward, and for the first time in almost a year, he looked at me without hostility or judgment. "Sarah, I owe you an apology. I've been watching the results you've achieved with other companies, and I've been talking to some of our mutual contacts in the industry. I was wrong about your motivations and your capabilities." The admission was so unexpected that I wasn't sure how to respond. "David, I appreciate you saying that." Dad nodded in agreement. "Sarah, we've been struggling with exactly the challenges you identified months ago. We've lost several major contracts to companies with stronger digital presence and more compelling presentations. I think it's time we seriously considered implementing some of the strategies you've been advocating." I felt a surge of vindication mixed with caution. This was the acknowledgment I'd hoped for, but I'd been disappointed before when apparent breakthroughs led to continued resistance. "I'd be happy to discuss how digital marketing could help Mitchell Construction compete more effectively." "Actually," David said, "we'd like to propose something more substantial than a consultation. We'd like to offer you a position as Director of Marketing and Business Development, with full authority to implement digital strategies and modernize our client acquisition processes." The offer was everything I'd dreamed of months ago, but my circumstances had changed dramatically since then. I now had a thriving independent practice, multiple clients who depended on my services, and professional opportunities that extended far beyond Phoenix's construction industry. "That's a generous offer," I said carefully, "but I'd need to think about how that would work with my existing client commitments." Dad leaned forward. "Sarah, we understand that you've built something valuable with your consulting practice. We're not asking you to abandon that entirely. We're proposing a partnership where you'd lead Mitchell Construction's marketing efforts while continuing to serve non-competing clients through your own business." The proposal was intriguing and addressed my main concerns about giving up the independence I'd worked so hard to achieve. But there was still the fundamental question of whether we could actually work together successfully after everything that had happened. "Dad, David, I appreciate this offer more than you know. But before we discuss logistics, I need to understand something. Do you genuinely believe that digital marketing strategies are necessary for Mitchell Construction's future success, or are you offering me this position primarily to repair our family relationships?" David answered immediately. "Sarah, the results speak for themselves. The companies you've worked with are winning contracts and growing their market share while we've been stagnating. We need your expertise because our business depends on it." Dad nodded in agreement. "Sarah, I was wrong to resist change for so long. I was wrong to see your innovations as threats to our values. Most importantly, I was wrong to question your loyalty to this family and this business. You've proven that tradition and innovation can coexist successfully, and we need you to help us implement that vision." For the first time in almost a year, I felt like my family truly understood what I'd been trying to accomplish. They weren't just offering me a job, they were asking me to lead the transformation I'd always envisioned for Mitchell Construction. "I accept," I said, "but with some conditions. I want authority to make decisions about digital strategy implementation without having to get approval for every initiative. I want to maintain my consulting practice with non-competing clients. And I want us to establish clear communication protocols so we never again have misunderstandings about loyalty or commitment." David extended his hand for a handshake. "Deal. Welcome back to Mitchell Construction, Director Mitchell." 6 months later, Mitchell Construction's digital transformation had exceeded everyone's expectations. Our new website showcased project portfolios that demonstrated our quality and reliability to potential clients before they ever met us in person. Our social media presence highlighted the craftsmanship and dedication that had always set us apart, but now those qualities were visible to thousands of potential clients rather than just existing customers. Most importantly, we'd landed 3 major contracts specifically because clients had been impressed by our online presence and digital communication capabilities. The revenue impact was substantial, but the psychological impact was even greater. Dad and David had seen firsthand that embracing change could strengthen rather than compromise the values that had always defined Mitchell Construction. The family Christmas party that year was held at the same restaurant where our reconciliation had begun, but the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of tension and misunderstanding, there was genuine celebration of our shared success. Dad stood up during dinner to make a toast that I'll never forget. To Sarah, he said, raising his glass, who taught us that loyalty sometimes means challenging the people you love to become better than they thought possible. As I looked around the table at my family, I realized that our journey had taught all of us valuable lessons about change, tradition, loyalty, and love. Sometimes the people who challenge us most are the ones who care about us most. Sometimes what looks like disloyalty is actually the deepest form of commitment. And sometimes the best way to honor tradition is to help it evolve and thrive in changing circumstances. Mitchell Construction was stronger than ever. My consulting practice continued to grow, and most importantly, my family had learned that innovation and tradition weren't opposing forces but complementary strengths that could create something more powerful together than either could achieve alone. 3 years after returning to Mitchell Construction as Director of Marketing and Business Development, I stood in the conference room of our newly expanded headquarters, preparing for what would be the most important presentation of my career. The room was filled with representatives from Phoenix Development Corp., the largest commercial real estate firm in Arizona, and they were considering Mitchell Construction for a $200 million master-planned community project that would define the next decade of our company's growth. The irony wasn't lost on me that this same conference room had been the site of so many failed attempts to convince Dad and David about the value of digital marketing. Now, 3 years later, our digital presence was the primary reason Phoenix Development Corp. Had approached us for this massive opportunity. They discovered Mitchell Construction through our LinkedIn content showcasing sustainable building practices. Then impressed by our Instagram portfolio of completed residential communities, and requested the meeting after watching a YouTube video series I'd created featuring Dad discussing the intersection of traditional craftsmanship and modern construction technology. "Sarah, are you ready?" Dad asked, entering the conference room wearing the custom Mitchell Construction polo shirt I'd designed as part of our rebrand 2 years ago. At 61, he carried himself with a confidence I'd never seen before, the satisfaction of someone who'd successfully evolved his life's work without compromising its essential character. "Ready as I'll ever be," I replied, reviewing my presentation notes one final time. The proposal we were about to present represented everything I'd learned about bridging traditional construction excellence with modern business practices. It showcased our company's expanded capabilities, our enhanced project management systems, and most importantly, our proven ability to deliver large-scale projects on time and under budget, while maintaining the quality standards that had always defined Mitchell Construction. David entered the room carrying a portfolio of project documentation, his role as head of operations having evolved significantly since our reconciliation. Where he'd once focused primarily on personnel management and company policies, he now oversaw project coordination, client relations, and quality assurance across all our major contracts. The experience of watching digital marketing transform our business had convinced him that strategic innovation was essential for long-term success. "The Phoenix development team is in the lobby," David announced. "Maria is bringing them up now." As we waited for our potential clients to arrive, I reflected on how dramatically our family dynamic had changed. The tension and miscommunication that had once defined our interactions had been replaced by genuine collaboration and mutual respect. Dad regularly sought my input on strategic decisions. David and I worked together seamlessly on project proposals, and all three of us had learned to appreciate how our different perspectives strengthened our collective decision-making. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. The first year after my return had required careful navigation of lingering sensitivities and gradual rebuilding of trust. Dad had struggled initially with giving me full authority over marketing decisions, occasionally reverting to his instinct to approve every initiative personally. David had needed time to adjust to my expanded role, and to accept that my success with competitors had genuinely been motivated by desire to prove marketing strategies rather than intention to harm our family business. But we'd worked through those challenges by establishing clear communication protocols and focusing on shared goals, rather than past grievances. Most importantly, we'd all committed to viewing disagreements as opportunities for better solutions rather than evidence of disloyalty or disrespect. The Phoenix Development Corp team entered the conference room led by Jennifer Walsh, their Senior Vice President of Development, whom I'd been corresponding with for 6 weeks about the master-planned community project. She was accompanied by their chief financial officer, project management director, and construction oversight manager, all of whom would have input on the contractor selection decision. Jennifer, welcome to Mitchell Construction, Dad said, standing to greet the team. Thank you for considering us for the Sunset Ridge Community Project. We're excited to show you why we believe we're the right partner for bringing your vision to life. The presentation began with Dad providing an overview of Mitchell Construction's 28-year history, emphasizing our track record of delivering complex commercial and residential projects while maintaining strong relationships with clients, subcontractors, and community stakeholders. His portion of the presentation highlighted the traditional values and proven processes that had sustained our business through multiple economic cycles and industry changes. David followed with a detailed review of our project management capabilities, showcasing the enhanced systems and technologies we'd implemented to improve efficiency, communication, and quality control. He presented case studies from recent large-scale projects, including timeline analyses, budget performance metrics, and client satisfaction scores that demonstrated our ability to handle complex logistics while maintaining attention to detail. My portion of the presentation focused on our modern communication approaches, digital project tracking systems, and innovative marketing strategies that had helped us attract and retain high-quality clients. I showed how our digital presence had evolved to showcase not just completed projects, but the processes, people, and
principles that made Mitchell Construction unique in an increasingly competitive marketplace. What sets Mitchell Construction apart, I explained to the Phoenix development team, is our ability to combine decades of construction expertise with modern tools and systems that enhance rather than replace our commitment to quality relationships and superior craftsmanship. We're not just building structures, we're building communities, and we understand that successful community development requires both technical excellence and genuine partnership with all stakeholders. Jennifer Walsh leaned forward, clearly engaged with our presentation. Sarah, I have to say that your digital presence was what initially caught our attention. The content you've created really demonstrates your company's depth of knowledge and commitment to innovation. But what impressed us most was how that digital presence reflects rather than contradicts your traditional values. The comment was exactly what I'd hoped to hear, validation that our 3-year effort to integrate digital marketing with traditional business practices had achieved its intended effect. We weren't using technology to hide our company's character, we were using it to showcase and amplify that character to broader audiences. The CFO, Robert Chen, addressed Dad directly. Mr. Mitchell, we've reviewed your financial statements and project history extensively. Your company has an exceptional track record of completing projects on time and within budget. What gives you confidence that you can maintain those standards while scaling up to handle a project of this magnitude? Dad's response demonstrated how much his perspective had evolved since our early disagreements about change and growth. Robert, that's an excellent question, and it gets to the heart of what Mitchell Construction has learned about sustainable growth. We've discovered that maintaining our quality standards while expanding our capabilities requires embracing new tools and systems that support rather than replace our core processes. He gestured toward David and me. My son David has implemented project management technologies that give us better visibility into every aspect of our operations, from material procurement to workforce scheduling to quality control checkpoints. My daughter Sarah has developed communication systems that keep all stakeholders informed and engaged throughout every phase of construction. These innovations don't change what we do, they help us do it better and more efficiently. The project management director, Lisa Rodriguez, asked David about our subcontractor relationships and how we'd ensure consistent quality across multiple work crews on a project spanning several years. David's response showcased the systematic approach he'd developed for vendor selection, performance monitoring, and continuous improvement. Lisa, we've built our subcontractor network over nearly 3 decades, and we maintain those relationships through consistent communication, fair payment practices, and shared commitment to quality standards, David explained. For a project of this scope, we'd implement enhanced coordination systems that ensure every crew understands not just their specific responsibilities but how their work contributes to the overall community vision. The presentation continued for 90 minutes, with detailed discussions about construction timelines, budget management, sustainability practices, and community engagement strategies. Throughout the conversation, I was struck by how naturally Dad, David, and I complemented each other's expertise and perspectives.
Where Dad provided historical context and relationship building insights, David offered operational details and systematic solutions, and I contributed marketing strategy and communication approaches. As the Phoenix development team prepared to leave, Jennifer Walsh addressed all three of us. This has been one of the most comprehensive and impressive contractor presentations we've received. Your combination of proven experience and modern capabilities is exactly what we're looking for in a development partner. She paused, looking around the conference room that had been updated with modern furnishings and technology while maintaining the warm professional atmosphere Dad had always preferred. What really stands out to us is how your family has managed to evolve your business while maintaining its essential character. That's exactly the kind of balance we want to achieve with the Sunset Ridge community. After the Phoenix development team departed, Dad, David, and I remained in the conference room to debrief the presentation and discuss next steps. The energy in the room was electric. We all sensed that the meeting had gone exceptionally well, and that we had a strong chance of landing the contract that would transform Mitchell Construction from a successful regional company into a major player in Arizona's commercial development market. That felt different, Dad said, settling back into his chair with a satisfied expression. In the past, presentations like this always felt like we were trying to convince clients that we were good enough for their projects. Today felt like we were showing them how we could make their project better. David nodded in agreement. The questions they asked weren't about whether we could handle the work. They were about how we'd handle it and what unique value we'd bring to the process. I pulled up our digital analytics on my laptop, showing them the website traffic and social media engagement that had resulted from our announcement about the potential Phoenix development partnership. Look at this. We've had 12 new project inquiries just since word got out that we were being considered for Sunset Ridge. Our reputation for handling large-scale projects is attracting other opportunities. The success metrics were gratifying, but what mattered most to me was the confirmation that our integrated approach was working exactly as I'd envisioned years ago. Digital marketing wasn't just helping us win individual contracts, it was elevating our entire market position and creating a sustainable competitive advantage. 2 weeks later, Jennifer Walsh called with the news we'd been hoping for. Phoenix Development Corp had selected Mitchell Construction as the primary contractor for the Sunset Ridge Community Project, a decision based on what she described as our unique combination of proven expertise, innovative systems, and authentic family values. The contract signing ceremony was held at our headquarters, with local media coverage highlighting the partnership between Phoenix's fastest-growing development firm and one of the region's most established construction companies. As I watched Dad and Jennifer Walsh sign the documents that would define our company's next chapter, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. 3 years earlier, I'd been fired from this same company for disloyalty to family values. Today I was being featured in Arizona Business Journal as an example of how traditional companies could successfully modernize while maintaining their core identity. The article quoted Dad saying, "Sarah didn't just bring us new marketing strategies. She taught us that honoring our traditions means helping them evolve and thrive in changing times." The Sunset Ridge Community Project would take 4 years to complete and would employ over 300 people at its peak. It would establish Mitchell Construction as a premier choice for large-scale residential development throughout the Southwest. Most importantly for our family, it would demonstrate that the painful conflicts and misunderstandings of our past had ultimately led to deeper collaboration and stronger relationships. 6 months into the Sunset Ridge project, I received an unexpected invitation that brought our transformation full circle. The Southwest Construction Industry Conference, where I'd first presented my ideas about bridging tradition and innovation, invited our entire family to participate in a panel discussion about family business evolution and multi-generational leadership. The panel was titled Legacy and Innovation: How Family Businesses Can Honor the Past While Embracing the Future, and it featured several construction industry families who'd successfully navigated generational transitions and changing market conditions. Dad, David, and I would share our story alongside other families who'd learned to balance tradition with necessary change. As we prepared for the panel discussion, I suggested that we focus on the lessons we'd learned about communication, trust, and shared values rather than just our business success. The most important insights from our experience weren't about marketing strategies or digital tools. They were about how families could work through fundamental disagreements while maintaining love and respect for each other. What would you say was the turning point for us? I asked Dad as we reviewed our presentation notes. Dad thought for a moment before responding. I think it was when I finally understood that you weren't trying to change what Mitchell Construction was, you were trying to help it become more of what it already was. Once I realized that your innovations were motivated by the same values that had driven me to build the company in the first place, everything else became possible. David added his perspective. For me, the turning point was recognizing that loyalty doesn't mean avoiding all risk or refusing to challenge existing approaches. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is push the people you care about to reach their full potential, even if that makes them uncomfortable. The panel discussion was attended by over 400 construction industry professionals, many of whom were struggling with similar generational transitions and market pressures. Our story resonated particularly with family business owners who were trying to balance respect for founding principles with the need to adapt to competitive realities. During the question and answer session, a young woman in the audience asked me directly, "Sarah, what advice would you give to someone who believes their family business needs to change but feels like they're fighting against years of established culture and resistance to new ideas?" My response drew on everything I'd learned through our difficult but ultimately successful journey. First, make sure you genuinely understand and respect what your family has built before suggesting how it should change. Second, find ways to demonstrate that your innovations support rather than threaten the values that made the business successful. Third, be patient with the process of building trust and changing perspectives. And finally, remember that sometimes the people who resist your ideas most strongly are the ones who care most deeply about protecting what they've worked so hard to create. After the panel, dozens of audience members approached us to share their own stories and ask for specific advice about implementing change in traditional family businesses. Many of them were dealing with dynamics similar to what we'd experienced, younger generation members with new ideas facing resistance from older generation members who viewed change as a threat to established success. One conversation particularly stood out. A young man named Carlos approached me to explain that he'd been fired from his family's plumbing business for suggesting that they needed to embrace digital scheduling and customer communication systems. His father viewed these innovations as unnecessary complications that would interfere with the personal relationships that had sustained their business for 40 years. Sarah, how did you deal with the feeling that your own family didn't trust your judgment or appreciate your contributions? Carlos asked. The question brought back all the emotions I'd experienced during my own period of estrangement from Mitchell Construction. Carlos, I won't lie to you. It was incredibly painful to feel like the people I cared most about viewed my passion for helping our business succeed as evidence of disloyalty. But I learned that sometimes you have to prove your ideas work elsewhere before your family can see their value at home. I gave Carlos contact information for several plumbing contractors I'd worked with who'd successfully implemented digital systems while maintaining their commitment to personal service. Sometimes the best way to bridge a gap with your family is to show them successful examples of other families who faced similar challenges and found solutions that work for everyone. As our conversation continued, I realized that our family's story had become more than just a personal journey of reconciliation and business success. It had become a template that other families could adapt to their own circumstances, proof that generational conflicts about tradition and innovation didn't have to result in permanent estrangement or business stagnation. The speaking engagement also reinforced how much our family dynamic had continued to evolve even after our initial reconciliation. Dad, David, and I had developed a collaborative working relationship that leveraged our different strengths while maintaining mutual respect for our different perspectives. We'd learned to view disagreements as opportunities for better solutions rather than threats to family harmony. Most importantly, we discovered that honoring family values didn't require freezing those values in time. Instead, it meant understanding the principles underlying our traditions and finding new ways to express and strengthen those principles in changing circumstances. As I write this, 5 years have passed since David fired me for disloyalty to family values. Mitchell Construction has completed the Sunset Ridge Community Project ahead of schedule and under budget, earning recognition as Arizona's Commercial Contractor of the Year. Our digital presence has attracted clients from across the Southwest, and our systematic approach to project management has become a model for other family construction businesses. My consulting practice has grown into a full-service agency specializing in traditional industry modernization, with clients in construction, manufacturing, agriculture, and hospitality throughout the western United States. The expertise I developed during our family's difficult transition has helped dozens of other businesses navigate similar challenges while maintaining their core identity and values. But the metrics that matter most to me aren't financial or professional. They're the quality of relationships within our family and the genuine collaboration that now defines our daily interactions. Dad regularly asks for my input on strategic decisions, not because he feels obligated to include me, but because he values my perspective and trusts my judgment. David and I work together seamlessly on complex projects, combining his operational expertise with my marketing insights to create solutions neither of us could develop independently. Most significantly, we've all learned that loyalty to family values sometimes requires challenging those values to evolve and strengthen them. The traditional approaches that built Mitchell Construction's original success were valuable and worth preserving, but they needed to be enhanced with modern tools and systems to remain effective in competitive markets. Our story began with a fundamental misunderstanding about what constituted loyalty and family values. It ended with a deeper understanding that true loyalty means helping the people and organizations you care about reach their full potential, even when that requires difficult conversations and uncomfortable changes. The construction industry continues to evolve rapidly, with new technologies, changing client expectations, and increased competition requiring constant adaptation and innovation. But Mitchell Construction is now positioned not just to survive these changes, but to thrive because of them. We've learned to view change as an opportunity to strengthen our core values rather than a threat to abandon them. As I look toward the future, I'm excited about the possibilities that lie ahead for our family and our business. The lessons we've learned about balancing tradition with innovation, resolving conflicts while maintaining relationships, and building bridges between different generations and perspectives will serve us well regardless of what challenges and opportunities emerge. The young woman who was once fired for disloyalty to family values has become the director of marketing and business development for a company that's stronger, more successful, and more united than ever before. But more importantly, she's part of a family that's learned to honor its past while embracing its future, to maintain its traditions while welcoming necessary change, and to express its values through both continuity and evolution. Sometimes the most difficult journeys lead to the most meaningful destinations. Sometimes the people who challenge us most are the ones who love us most. And sometimes what looks like disloyalty is actually the deepest form of commitment to helping the people and organizations we care about become everything they're capable of being. Tonight, as I sit in my home office overlooking downtown Phoenix, I'm preparing for tomorrow's groundbreaking ceremony for the largest project in Mitchell Construction's history. The Desert Springs Medical Complex will be a $500 million healthcare campus that will serve southern Arizona for decades to come. More importantly, it represents the culmination of a journey that began with devastating words about disloyalty and family values. The project came to us through channels that wouldn't have existed before our transformation. The hospital board discovered Mitchell Construction through our LinkedIn thought leadership content about sustainable healthcare construction. They were impressed by our YouTube series featuring patient-centered design principles. They chose us over larger competitors because our digital presence demonstrated not just our capabilities, but our values and commitment to community impact. David called me an hour ago with news that still gives me chills. Sarah Dr. Martinez from the hospital board just called. They want to feature our family in their documentary about the medical campus project. They said our story about bridging tradition and innovation perfectly captures what they're trying to achieve with next-generation healthcare facilities. The irony is breathtaking. 5 years ago, I was terminated for suggesting that tradition and innovation could coexist. Tomorrow we'll break ground on a project that exists precisely because we proved that concept works. But the real transformation isn't measured in contract values or industry recognition. It's visible in the small moments that define our daily relationships. Last week, Dad stopped by my office to ask my opinion about a potential acquisition opportunity. Sarah, I've been thinking about expanding into sustainable building materials. What do you think our digital audience would respond to in that market? The question demonstrated how completely his perspective had evolved. He wasn't just asking for marketing advice, he was thinking strategically about how our online community could inform business development decisions. The man who once viewed social media as superficial noise now understands that digital relationships can provide valuable market intelligence. David has undergone an equally remarkable transformation. Yesterday he sent me an article about generational leadership in family businesses with a note that said, "This reminds me of our story, except we had a better ending." The brother who once questioned my loyalty now celebrates our ability to work through fundamental disagreements while maintaining family bonds. Our Christmas dinner last year included a moment that perfectly captured how far we've traveled together. Dad stood up to make his annual toast, but instead of his usual reflection on the year's accomplishments, he said something that brought tears to my eyes. "I want to thank Sarah for teaching me the difference between preserving tradition and preserving the principles behind tradition. What we've built together over the past 5 years isn't just a more successful business. It's a demonstration that love sometimes means challenging the people you care about to become better than they thought possible." Mom, who had watched our conflicts with quiet concern for years, finally spoke up. "Robert, I'm proud of all three of you for learning that being a family means growing together, not just agreeing with each other. The impact extends beyond our immediate family. My consulting practice now includes a program specifically designed for family businesses, navigating generational transitions. I've worked with farming families in Iowa, manufacturing companies in Michigan, and restaurant chains in California, helping them bridge divides between tradition-focused founders and innovation-minded next-generation leaders. Each client brings unique challenges, but the underlying patterns are remarkably consistent. Older generations often interpret younger generations' desire for change as criticism of their life's work. Younger generations frequently mistake older generations' resistance to change as stubbornness or lack of vision. Both perspectives contain elements of truth, but neither captures the complete picture. The solution isn't choosing between tradition and innovation. It's understanding that healthy traditions evolve while maintaining their core purposes. The values that built successful family businesses remain relevant, but the methods for expressing and implementing those values must adapt to changing circumstances. 3 months ago, I received a LinkedIn message that reminded me why this work matters beyond business metrics. Carlos, the young man I'd met at the construction conference whose father had fired him from their plumbing business, wrote to update me on their progress. "Sarah, I wanted you to know that my dad and I are working together again. After seeing the results some of the contractors you recommended achieved with digital scheduling, he agreed to try a pilot program. It worked so well that he's now asking me to lead our technology transformation. He told me last week that he was wrong to see my ideas as threats to our family values. Thank you for showing us that innovation and tradition can strengthen each other." Stories like Carlos's remind me that our painful journey created value beyond our own family's healing. The conflicts we worked through, the misunderstandings we resolved, and the bridges we built have become templates that other families can adapt to their own circumstances. The Desert Springs Medical Complex groundbreaking tomorrow will feature speeches from city officials, hospital administrators, and community leaders. But the moment I'm most looking forward to is when Dad, David, and I will ceremonially turn the first shovel of dirt together. That simple gesture will represent more than the beginning of a construction project. It will symbolize the completion of our own construction project, building a family relationship strong enough to support both tradition and change, both individual growth and collective success. As I review my remarks for tomorrow's ceremony, I keep coming back to a simple truth that took us years to understand. The phrase disloyalty to family values that once wounded me so deeply has become the foundation of our greatest strength. We learned that true loyalty sometimes requires challenging the people you love. We discovered that authentic family values include the courage to evolve and improve. Most importantly, we proved that honoring the past and embracing the future aren't opposing forces, but complementary aspects of building something lasting and meaningful. Tomorrow, when we break ground on the Desert Springs Medical Complex, we'll be doing more than starting another construction project. We'll be demonstrating that families can disagree, learn, grow, and ultimately create something more powerful together than any of us could have achieved alone. The young woman who was once fired for disloyalty to family values will stand beside her father and brother, united in purpose and strengthened by the journey that brought us here. Sometimes the most painful endings become the most beautiful beginnings. Sometimes getting fired is the first step toward finding your true calling. And sometimes the people who seem to believe in you least are actually preparing you to believe in yourself most. The construction industry will continue evolving, technology will keep advancing, and market conditions will remain challenging. But Mitchell Construction is ready for whatever comes next, because we've learned the most important lesson of all. Success isn't about avoiding change or embracing it blindly. Success is about building relationships strong enough to support both continuity and transformation, both individual dreams and shared values. That's the legacy we're building, one project and one conversation at a time. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.